What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the CrazyFaceUno podcast. I am excited to have my guest with me today. Her name is Annie Elias.
Yes. Hello.
And welcome, Annie. I'm so glad you're here. You are so welcome, and I am so happy to have you. Just a little bit about you that I know. You work in special education. Mm-hmm. Seems to be a theme with my guests lately. You're a single mom.
Yes.
Recently divorced.
Yes.
You are a mother of 2.
Yes.
And that's where I'm going to start.
Okay.
Start and stop.
Yeah, that's
one of the things.
Nutshell.
Yeah, and one of the things I love to ask right out of the gates, because I think it's like perspective, right? Like, is what are 3 things that you think people should know about you?
Oh, that is intriguing. It
kind of gives us a little idea.
Yeah,
Take your time,
I think
no
3 things. One would be I'm determined.
I'm
motivated.
Yes, you are.
And I'm a helper.
Determined, motivated, and a helper.
Yeah.
I love it. And I would definitely agree that all those things, like those, like are like spot on. I would agree.
Okay.
So let's just get into it.
Okay.
Let's start from the beginning. Like, you're from Minnesota, right?
I am, yeah.
So, and I saw, you went to White Bear Lake.
I did.
Which
I
is
work
like
there now.
right next door to where, like where you work.
Yep.
And so what was that experience like from, like, well, maybe just talk like about just your life starting out, like how,
Sure.
like how you got to special education and teaching, because I think that I don't really know this story, but I know that it's all going to come full circle here, I think. So
yeah, it kind of took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. Sure. When I graduated high school, I went to Winona State University.
Okay.
So that's 2 hours south from the Twin Cities, and I was going to do elementary education.
Okay. So education was always kind of like...
Yep, I always wanted to be a teacher. Yeah. When I was a little girl, I would set up all my stuffed animals on the couch, and I would make all my Berenstain Bears books. One was science, one was math, one was reading, and cool. I would have a chalkboard. Yeah. I set it all up. I always wanted to be a teacher.
That's awesome.
And so when I went to Winona State, I only took like the gen ed requirements. I didn't do any elementary ed yet. Yeah. And so, excuse me. So I took a sign language class. And I fell in love. Yeah. And I thought, what can I do with this? And I went to my advisor, and she said, well, you can be an interpreter. And you can go to St. Paul College, or you can go to St. Kate's University. I applied to both. I got into both. St. Paul College is cheaper. So I went there. I transferred out of Winona State, moved back in with my parents for a few months. Then I moved into Minneapolis with a friend of mine, and went to St. Paul College, got my interpreter degree. Yeah. I applied at 916 because I knew I wanted to do education. Yeah. I still wanted to do education. And I applied for a 6-hour-a-week job at 916. They called me right before school started, and they asked me if I wanted full-time. And I interviewed, got in. You
were like, yes, please.
Yes, please, right? I was like, I'll take my chances 6 hours a week. I heard great things about 916. Yeah. Sorry, excuse me.
You're okay.
And so I interpreted in education for 3 years. I never got nationally certified. Yeah. It wasn't meant to be, I don't think. Yeah. Certification was really challenging. Right. They were still trying to...
I've heard it's like quite the process, right?
It really is. So you go, you take this test, and the test, I mean, if you're interpreting sign language, everything is all about your body. And so you have to videotape yourself.
Your, the face stuff.
Yes,
like,
all
I know
the
you, like,
facial
puff the
expressions.
Cheeks, or, like, there's different things.
Absolutely.
We had a program at my college, and I know a little bit about it just because of that, but I don't really know like the ins and outs. But I watched them because we had chapel, because it was a private Christian school, and they would like interpret. That was how they got their hours, and they had to like cycle through, and everybody had their different things. So I had friends that were in the program.
Oh, that's cool. Not many people really understand like what goes into interpreting sign language, and that's really neat that you know that.
Well, and they video it just like you were talking about. Like they video their, them interpreting, and so then they critique it, and they go through the whole thing, and it's a dog-eat-dog world, and
it
very
is.
harsh, but
oh my gosh, the training program, you have to get very used to watching yourself on video. Yeah. And it's a vulnerable feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they would do the videotaping. They would do different, They would do that just in their regularly.
Yes.
Like videotape themselves, like practicing and doing different things.
And this was back in like 2003 to 2005. So this was really before flash drives. Yeah. And before, I had video cassettes. I had tape cassettes. Mm-hmm. And I finally just threw them away when I moved.
How was that? Was it hard?
It was. It was like
nostalgia.
But how am I gonna actually access this? And why on earth would I want to watch myself interpreting and struggling and like So I went into the national certification, and there's only 3 people in the nation that get your video. So you have to watch somebody that is deaf and voice what they're saying. Then you have to listen to like a text or like a script, and then you interpret that part. Yeah. And then there's like Q&A, like a discussion kind of a thing, and you have to answer and see how fluent you are going in conversational. And I think that's how it went. It was so long ago, I don't really remember. But so then this tape gets sent out to these 3 people in the nation, and they kind of more or less assess your skills. Mm-hmm. I didn't pass. Yeah. So I got an extra year, like teachers get variances. I basically had like a variance, like I could have 1 extra year not certified. So then I started working with students that were deafblind. Mm-hmm. And I got so interested in that because I was able to be more a part of what was happening. Because as an interpreter, it's a really important skill. It's a really important connection for somebody that's deaf in a hearing world, right? Yeah. However, I didn't really get to talk to anybody because I'm really there as almost like a conduit. So like I'm next to the teacher and I'm interpreting everything and I'm voicing what the student is saying. But what teachers don't always understand, and you have to kind of inform people and almost train them to understand that interpreters are there really for the communication, not as a one-to-one education assistant or a para. Right. And so that's where like the line gets really fuzzy.
And you end up kind of wearing a few more hats than
you're
really
yes. And
supposed to. Or...
Right. And then you kind of look like the bad guy because you're like, well, that's not my job. My job is to make sure that this child is getting the information that they need. Right. I'm not there to do things for them. Which is a full-time job in and of itself.
Well,
right. Yeah, absolutely. And so my first year, I worked with a 5th grade student and interpreted for him, and that was super fun. But I didn't quite feel like it was my thing. Then the second year, I became a float. And so I got to I went from even the auditory and oral program that we have at 916, which is like the little preschool, kindergarten, little kids that that are
almost like learning to.
Yeah, like they're learning how to use their like hearing aids or their cochlear implants. Yeah. And then all the way up to Century College. And so as a float, I was able to gain a lot of experiences in a lot of different school settings. So elementary, middle school, high school, college, all these things. Ton of awesome experiences. I ended up working with a student that was in band and choir.
Oh, cool.
And I got to go on a band trip.
Nice.
And advocated for 2 other interpreters to come with, and we were on the bus. We had to interpret like all the movies they watched. So like we had to interpret Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and like all these things. It was so fun.
Yeah.
So fun. We got to go to the CN Tower. We got to go to this really cool castle place. And like,
that's so cool.
I've had a lot of really fun experiences with interpreting. But then once I started working with Deaf Blind, I was able to walk into South Campus, which is where
where you currently
now.
Work. Yes.
Yeah. And
you're, I mean, there's another one of those little fruit flies. Gosh, I swear we have. There's like a problem. I don't understand where they're coming from. Like this room is not like there's nothing in the trash can that I don't know. Anyway, but you're currently like you've been working with since I've met you. This has been generally your classroom has been working with the nonverbal and just more with communicating and a communication like focus for the students that you have in your classroom, which the school that we worked at or I used to work at and you currently do. Each room has kind of got its own specific types of like learning in some ways, somewhat, right? Like it's kind of broke up and you specifically got that group of kids, which is really cool.
Yeah, my sign language background has definitely taught me a lot about communication. So I kind of have a speechy brain when it comes to that kind of thing. So I love being able to collaborate with our speech team. Yeah. And working great. With them. They are. Oh my goodness. We have I want to get really Nikki fantastic. On
here. Wouldn't she be fun?
Oh my goodness.
I love Nikki. She's like one of my favorite human beings. Nikki, honestly, if you're listening, I'm going to be reaching out to you. So
yeah, Nikki, do it because
she's awesome.
We would all benefit from Nikki's knowledge and expertise.
And she used to be in the Peace Corps. She's got like a fascinating background. She's a fascinating woman.
She really is.
Not to get distracted from this fascinating woman that I have in
front of me. So I walked into South Campus and I never felt so welcomed by the community of people that worked with these students. Because when I would go and sub at an elementary or a middle school or a high school, like mainstream, where the kids were in special ed or they were in general ed and just kind of higher functioning, able to do it as an interpreter.
Very isolating.
Completely. I wouldn't talk all day long except for other people or take in the information they're doing and then produce it for them. So I would go to like the lunchroom, the staff break room, and not a single person would like say hi or even like, I'm a friendly person. I don't think I'm very intimidating. Maybe I am. I don't know. Anyway, so I walk into South Campus and I was like, this is my jam. Yeah. Like, I am down with this.
They're different.
For
sure.
Yes.
And I subbed a lot before I came to South Campus, and I worked in other programs. I worked in our South Metro 917 program.
Oh, okay.
And then started subbing in Eric's room, who was one of our guests as well. He was there on the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt the same way. Like it's just different at 916, and every place has their flaws. It's just the way it goes, right? And
of course,
we won't get into any of that, but it's different. It's better. There's a feeling that you get there, and I feel like just everybody's there for a reason, and like they're like with the right mindset for the most part. And I've had this conversation with other people from South Campus as well, that I think that everybody that's there, get him. Everybody that's there is I think that there's like just something about them that's drawn there, and the people that aren't supposed to be there are kind of filtered out.
Yep. I agree.
And you can just tell, like you can tell by the attitudes and the personalities that kind of come and go, and like new people. There is a revolving door, and it's a tough job. There's a lot of tough things that
yes,
that we deal with, or that you guys deal with, and if you're not there for the right reasons, there's no way you'll be willing to stick it out. Like
you either get it or you don't.
You have to have a little bit of an empathetic heart, and like you've got to be able to like just understand and empathize and have those moments. I mean, we've all been there where your kid's bummed out, your kid's crying, your kid's hurting, especially in your classroom where it's tough to communicate sometimes with your guys and gals, and man, we've been in tears because they're in tears,
I know,
and like
it's
our heart breaks sometimes because we want to help you, but we don't know how.
Yes.
And,
yes, definitely.
If that's not why you're there, if you're just there for the money and you're going to quickly filter yourself out.
Let's be honest, who's there for the money? The money in education is just not there.
It's true.
However,
if you're just there for
if
a
your
job,
heart
though,
isn't into it, then you might as well just walk out the door. Because if you don't see the personalities of each of these individuals, then there's really no point. Because they all bring... They're human.
Yeah.
And I get real protective of my students. I get real mama bear when people don't understand that they have needs just like you and I do, and they just can't communicate them. And feelings, yes. And if somebody's constantly telling you what to do, I'd probably want to punch you in the face. Like, stop telling me what to do. Ask me questions. Give me some space. Like, stop talking to me for a while, or talk to me more. Like, I don't know. You have to get to know. Relationships are like huge. The number one thing to start with when you have a classroom of students, especially when they're nonverbal. You're not going to get anywhere if they don't trust you or understand that you're there to help them.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And I know something that you do well, just from my experience being like in your classroom and some of those different things, is you do give time, and you like figure out how to work with that, and you're not afraid to give time, give space, and let's focus on this one specific thing, and let's move on to the next thing. Let's change things and do something different. Well, that's not working, so let's try a different avenue. Let's try a different way. And I think that that's really important. You quickly figure out that if something's not working, like you can just tell, like and you can tell, you get to know your kids. You get those I don't know what the word I'm like looking for, you just get to know, like there's little nuancy things that you like learn about each individual student. It just like you and I, just like any other person, we all have our little things that either bother us or that we respond well to, whether that's the way you communicate, whether it's the smile that you give them or the way you joke with them or whatever that is, like my student that I worked with a lot, I just found different ways and it's just amazing to be walking, I'd walk with him every day and all the time. Yep. And learning that he he sings, and just singing to him or with him, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We would sing that multiple times, but it's like, oh, I never knew that he would ever sing. And one day we're
getting to know them, they get to know you, and how that kind of repertoire kind of
exactly
exists.
And it's things that people come in from the outside and they don't realize, and that's part of the reason when subs come in, it is difficult for both the sub and for their staff, for your staff, because when you have those relationships, you know exactly what this student, is having a hard time, and why, but it's so hard to keep an eye on every single student in your classroom to be hold their hand through those processes. And
exactly. And you have to balance. Everything is a balance. It's Amelia always says it's like spinning plates on sticks, like making sure your plates don't fall to the ground. Like you're constantly spinning plates. What I've learned as a teacher and being in special ed, going on now, I've been with 916, goodness, I'm aging myself now, but it'll be, I started in 2005, it's 19, this will be my 15th year.
Wow, congratulations.
Working with 916, thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I
How long as a teacher?
6.
6 years.
This will be going into my 7th.
Nice. Yeah. That's so cool.
And, Yeah, so I finally decided to go back to school when I started to be an intervener working with deafblind students, because I wanted more. I wanted to make more of a difference. And as being able to go to different elementary schools and middle schools and high schools, I saw how special ed was being taught, and I didn't always agree with decisions that were being made for the students. And I just kind of wanted to learn more about it, I guess, and insert myself in a different way. So when I was an intervener, I always worked with one student, and that was my student. And it's been so interesting. But I was able to work at South Campus for 2 years with a deafblind student. Okay. And I got to be in Luann's classroom. Nice. Before, she just retired not too long ago. Last
year.
2 years?
2 years ago. Yeah, I was here when she, I think.
Yeah, so that...
no, I came in right after the year after.
Is that what happened?
It was like 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, so I learned so much being at South Campus, and it just kind of worked out that I went back to school. And I got to student teach at South Campus. Yeah. With June, before she retired. Yeah. And I got to, I see the students still now, like going to the next program, going to Well South or doing their thing. And it's so wonderful to see how amazing.
Continue to progress.
Yes.
I know. I think about some of the students that graduated the last couple of years, and just wonder where they're at and like wonder how they're doing, and
I realized that not this coming school year, but the next school year will be the first student that I've ever had that will graduate.
Oh wow.
And I haven't had that experience
yet
because I usually have the younger, like middle school age.
Yeah. So it takes a little while.
Younger aged high school. Yeah. So I'm going to be a wreck. I'm going to cry a lot.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah, but I get to have this student in summer school. And so
cool.
Right now. Yeah. So it's super fun to see those old students again, and it's like it's just like coming home. But South Campus definitely to me it's my second family.
Yeah.
Like this last year for me professionally and personally has been probably the hardest year I've ever had.
Right.
And I don't think I could have actually succeeded or like felt like I came out on top if I didn't have the support of everybody at South Campus. Like, and I'm an open book. Like, I'd rather put it out there and like get support from other people than keep it in other. Everybody's different with that, but
I tell you what, and I knew, we mentioned like. This is what you're talking about is you were recently divorced and all of that finalized this last year. And I mean, everybody knows that that's just a hard time in general. Like there's very few divorces that are going to go like, that was great,
it's not pleasant. Yeah, it's awkward. And
then plus you had all of the other, you had several staff that were gone or got hurt and injured throughout the year. And so you were, back to being like a lot of subs and a lot of people that were kind of filling in, which is just hard when they're not consistent necessarily, and you've got different changes, and a lot of our kids crave consistency, and so new faces and new things coming in all the time. It's exhausting as a teacher, it's exhausting as a student, which then leads to increased behaviors, and it's just this snowball effect. And all of the things you mentioned, at the beginning of your like 3 things we should know about you, I feel like is very spot on to what I would like this last year. And I knew you were struggling at times, but I think that one of the many reasons that I wanted to have you on here is how much of a strong and graceful woman that you are, and like leader. And like I think I look up to you. I think that it's very very much from the time I met you, which you were sitting in the cafeteria or in the kitchen, was like the first time I think I ever like saw you and met you, and I was with a student using the bathroom in that bathroom there. And I don't know, you have this like thing about you that is awesome. It's just like I saw you and I'm like, she's got her shit together. She knows what's going on. And whether I know we all like don't feel like we do at times.
Yeah, no.
And we're making it up as we go sometimes.
Totally.
But I would have like zero problems like handing something off to you and being like, go get him, Annie.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that you would be determined and motivated to like do your best work and to make that happen. And I think that's very indicative of like who you are as a person, and it shows with your relationships you build with your students and your staff, and like the environment that you want to, I think that you want to foster within your educator, like being a teacher and within your classroom. So.
Well, thank you, Shane.
Absolutely.
That's very sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think I don't know. Like you had mentioned just a little while ago about empathy, and empathy is what drives me. Like I have to understand that maybe this kid isn't feeling well. How would I feel if I was going through this? Put yourself in their shoes.
Right.
It's a lot easier to do our job if we can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And to be able to help. Because if we don't know how to help, we all feel lost.
Yep.
And that's a really icky feeling.
Absolutely.
Nobody likes that. Yeah.
I've felt that myself, a little lost at times, you know?
Yeah.
And it is exhausting. It really is.
It is.
I've brought this book up several times. There's a book called Start with Why by Simon Sinek, I think is his name. Or Start with the Why. And I think it's very much a part of, without thinking in that like those specific terms, I think we do that, and I think that a lot of us do that at South Campus of like, why? Why is this student having this behavior? And like if you can understand the why, then you can start to like decode those different things. You can start to see the precursors. You can start to say, well, every time this happens, you know? And so why is a very important question. And it's kind of what you're talking about, I think.
Absolutely. We need to know the function of a behavior, and we're trained to understand that, but it's individualized. You can't know the function of a behavior until you know the student, or even... You almost got him. That fruit fly, gnat, whatever that is. You have to, you just really have to embrace the difficulties and the challenges and realize that really at the end of the day, like, how much time did that actually take? And is that going to make or break how the day goes? But then also...
Then safety comes into play.
Right?
Which is like a whole nother thing of like keeping your students safe, but not just them safe, but sometimes it's our staff, you know, whether it's, you know, you got some claws sometimes. Those hands can be a little handsy, and that's pinching, grabbing, biting, hitting. I mean, we deal with all of those different things, and it's not that it's not, again, it's like if you understand the why, like sometimes, like you said, man, I want to punch people in the face sometimes too. Right. You know, like,
and what would happen if we didn't have that filter that tells us that's wrong?
Exactly. And some of our students, that's legitimately what we're teaching them to understand and like comprehend is like, it's okay to have this feeling. This is how you handle it. Yes. And these are the steps we want you to take.
Here are other things that you can do to replace that.
Exactly. Replacement behavior.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, behavior tools and PCM training and all that stuff. Like it I don't know. It's helped me even in my home life.
Absolutely.
I mean, my kids have been going through a transition with all of this and these changes in moving, and they are coming out on top. Like, but I don't know if I didn't have these tools in my own kit. Yeah. I
you can easily see how, you know, people that have gone through this that didn't have some of those, how the outcomes can turn out to be the way they are.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming. And I'm a product of, you know, my parents divorced when I was a sophomore in high school. Okay. And, you know, a different time in my life than your kids. Yours are a little younger, but it's still hard. You know, I mean, it's just a hard thing. There's a lot to comprehend that at a young age, whether it's high school or younger. I mean, it's just hard to understand, hard to comprehend, hard to kind of like figure some of those things out, manage your own emotions. Why do I feel this way? And even now, like, as I get older, I look back and I'm like, oh, like,
yeah,
that makes sense. Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of it like that, or like, I didn't realize that that's why I was so upset about that, or like why I responded this way to this scenario because of XYZ.
Right.
It's just interesting. Like,
yeah, it is. And that makes me think of like self-reflection.
mm-hmm.
That is a really hard thing.
Yeah. How do you just
self-reflecting is like,
how do you describe that, or how do you?
Holy cow!
Yeah. Especially at a young age, like, how do you tell how old are you? Your
8,
oldest?
My oldest is 8, and my youngest is 4.
8 and 4.
4 is she's going on 16.
Yeah.
Holy attitude, sassy McGee, and I mean, yeah, but their resiliency is amazing, and they're so fun. They're at such fun ages.
Yeah.
It's just so fun.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, how do you teach an 8-year-old to self-reflect? Right. And how do you even break down what that is? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's
you
really
read them a Google
important
definition,
to talk.
or...
communication, right?
Well, and along those same lines, 90% of companies just in the world, like business and any company you work for, one of the biggest issues is always communication.
It is. And
because everybody's different and everybody has different experiences in life, and we view things through a different lens, and we internalize. I'm guilty of this as well. Like, whether this podcast has actually been really interesting for me because I listen to the podcast afterwards usually, and I have that inner dialogue in my head of like what I'm thinking, and I'm trying to like articulate that as it come out. And so sometimes I've like left the podcast and I'm like, what was I saying? You know?
Yeah.
And then I listen and I'm like, oh, that was bad at all.
Yeah.
But like in my head, it was chaos.
Right.
You know, like I was just like fumbling through, and I'm like, oh, it actually came out
like
more clear than I expected. Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's been the opposite where I was like, what were you saying? Like, that made way more sense in your head. And it's just interesting. It's really opened my eyes to my own self criticisms in some ways. Like, I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm my biggest critic, but it's just allowed me to kind of see like, oh, like, don't be so hard on yourself. You know, like it's okay.
Yeah,
like,
you gotta ease up.
Or just like see it through a different lens, or maybe what you're saying isn't coming across the way you think it is, and which is just interesting.
It is. Well, and I mean, communication can just be an interpretation. So like you said, you know, people that look through it at a different lens. If you're in a bad mood, you're going to take it differently. If you're in a good mood, you're going to take it differently.
Right.
But it's important that you understand that your emotion affected how you took that message.
Yes.
And that's self-reflection.
Yes.
Like, oh, okay, I just learned from that. I'm going to not respond that way next time if it was bad. Or, you know, like, okay. I have to say, though, after working as a teacher at South Campus, it has humbled me quite a bit and made me incredibly flexible in my thinking.
Yeah.
And when I first started teaching, I was very rigid. I'm sure many people that have worked with me in my classroom could speak to that.
Yeah.
Eric being one, I'm sure he could have some stories. I mean, I would get so worked up about things not going the way that I wanted them to.
Right.
And then I just slowly realized that, well, things are never going to go the way I want them to. Like, that's profound. I mean, it's so simple, like, but it's like... yeah, like, I just need to, like, take a step back and realize that I need to let go of some of this control. Sure. Because I can't control things. Yeah. What's the ultimate goal here? You gotta... Right now. This is like... yeah, right?
Go ahead. Keep talking, because I need to hear this.
But just, like, having to give up that control, it's a hard thing, but it's also so freeing. Just to, you know, like, what I absolutely love to do is collaborate with the education assistants in the classroom. I mean, work their tails off every single day for these kids. And for what? For me to say, this is how we do things. And I don't know all the answers, right? But I kind of have to be like the go-to person. Yeah. And so
Well, and fostering that relationship with those people that have your back and that are working their tails off. And
absolutely.
All those different things and just hearing them, because sometimes we see things differently than you do.
Yeah.
As EAs or as the teacher, and you are working one-on-one with a student or whatever that might look like. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, I experienced this today. This is one thing I loved about, being in Eric's room, that we, there were a lot of behaviors, and mm-hmm. That was one thing that we really did almost every day. It was like, hey, I noticed this today. This seemed to work. Like, oh, well, let's try that again tomorrow.
Let's do it, yeah.
Then it didn't work. And be like, well, okay, I guess yesterday must have just been the thing, or we can keep trying, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But
well, and change is hard, too. So if you're changing something up, you kind of have to stick with it for a while to get that rhythm, that routine, that whatever. So, I always have, in my head, I always think, all right, we're going to try this out for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, it's not sticking. Yeah. We got to try something else.
What was the catalyst for you kind of changing that mind frame of, letting go and, not being so rigid? Was there, one moment, or was it, just a process?
I think a series of moments. Okay. Yeah, I think it was definitely a process, a progression of events. Becoming a mother of two, having a different kind of caseload in my classroom of students that had different needs, realizing that I'm more task-oriented than I really am time-oriented.
Yeah.
So I would rather spend more time on a task than, it's 10:30, we got to stop this, because we have to go to the next thing. I think what I needed to have was a consistent schedule and a consistent routine because of the students that I had.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. Did I produce some OCD behaviors in some of my students?
Yeah.
Or did they produce my OCD? Okay, Annie, take a step back.
Well, I'm the same way. Well, and through this move, I've really had to just take a deep breath and step back sometimes.
Center yourself a little bit.
The thing I keep saying, and it's true, it's all going to work out. At the end of the day, it's happening whether I want it to or not.
Yeah.
Whether it happens the way I want it to or not.
Right.
Whether it's happening. Here we go, right?
Yep.
And so the one thing I keep saying is trust the process. I have to trust the process, I'm doing everything I can. There's nothing more I can do right now. There wasn't. At some points in time throughout this process, I'm we don't have a home. We don't have a place to live right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's stressful.
Limbo.
And I want to take care of my wife. I want to make sure that she has a place to live when she gets there. Those are my nurturing things. I want to protect her. I want to take care of her. Mm-hmm. And so that stresses me out even on top of that. But I'm doing the right thing. We've gone through this process. We're talking with the relocation company. We've got this stuff set up.
Yep.
Just trust the process. There's no need to stress about it. It just causes more anxiety, causes more problems. Yep. Just trust the process.
Yeah.
And I think for me, this has been an ongoing thing. I have some OCD stuff, Yeah. Thanks, Dad. I know you're listening out there. And definitely control, I don't like giving up control unless I want to.
Yeah.
But then again, it's control. So
it is. It's
controlling when I give control and when I don't, and when I relinquish that or not, and which is hard.
It's figuring out the why, right? Mm-hmm. Why did I just react that way? Why do I think that way?
Self-reflection.
Yes.
You're just going full circle.
I know, and the function of the behavior. Why did I just act that way?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We are complex individuals.
It's true. I mean, that's just human.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what have you noticed, switching gears a little bit, we touched on, I guess, a little bit with your kids. Mm-hmm. What have been some of the changes that you didn't expect as a single mom, being single again? Mm-hmm. What have there been things you're oh, I didn't expect that to be a thing, or?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer to that.
That's okay. If you don't, you don't. No worries.
Yeah, I think what surprised me the most is how amazing my kids really are, and I I don't know. They talk to me. Even my 4-year-old, like, we can have these really nice conversations about, even if it's about, I don't know, something as small as, like, my son loves his video games. Like, tell me about that game. Like, what are you doing in that game? And he just, I don't know. They're brilliant, and I don't know. That's a interesting question.
Yeah. Well, if you think of anything, we can come back to it. It's not a big deal. I didn't know if there was like anything when you just as it's obviously a big change. And
I think
how long were you married?
It would have been 10 years.
10 years. So that's a good chunk of time. And so like that's a big change. Even Dana and I have only been married for a year, but we've been together for. We were talking. I had her sister on. It was like 5 years since we've like. Been kind of dating. I
didn't realize that. Okay.
So it's like been a good chunk of time that we've been together as a couple, and which is mind-boggling because it seems like just yesterday.
Right.
But yeah, I legitimately can't imagine being single. Like I can't imagine. Like we have such a rhythm of life sometimes. Just the way we operate and the way we like do things, or the things I'm dependent upon with her, and the things that she's dependent upon with me, and we get done at school at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I like to come home, and this is my way of like helping out around the house. Like she makes more money and she does all these things. She works hard, and she gets home at 6:30, and I'm like, I got dinner ready, but we do things differently. She fixes my lunch in the mornings, and like so she does lunch and I do dinner, and it's just little things like that where. You get into these grooves, and I can't imagine not having those things, or like those completely changing. And I could see those things like being very eye-opening, and then throw kids in there and that process.
Well, what I will say is, if you really haven't been a team, it doesn't really change.
Yeah.
So I've always been a very independent person.
Yeah.
And that's just me. If somebody's not going to take care of it, then I will.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the way it goes. But I guess one thing that I've discovered through this is I always felt like I'm going to be okay. Like this is going to work out. Like I'm an independent person. But I really feel like I am able to really do the things that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like I'm back in school.
Yeah.
I'm getting my master's.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What is your master's going to be in?
Curriculum and instruction.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I want to go on and get my doctorate.
Good for
you. I would like to be Dr. Elias.
Yes.
Even if that really means nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Get it.
Yeah! High five. Love it. Yeah.
I love it.
So, I don't know. I think I want to ultimately be a good role model for my kids. Mm-hmm. I really want to show them that women can be strong and empowered.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and that's, I mean, there's so many things. I've thought about this too. I think we're creatures of that kind of, I don't know what the word is. Like, you look at your parents, right? Mm-hmm. And they almost set this blueprint for you of how to become them.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they know.
Right. And that's what we know. Like, I look at my parents and like the jobs and the careers they have, and it's like, oh, there's like you've experienced that world and that life, or just been around it where they talk about it, you hear things, and so it becomes a little bit more second nature to you, or like you see how that path works and how their life is. And so, you look at, well, I would say that like doctors and lawyers and engineers or whatever, name the job, your kids are more likely to become something along those fields than not, just because it's that comfort and that knowledge that background knowledge that you have. And so I think there's some truth to even the idea of like you want the best for your kids. You want to see what a strong, independent, kick-ass woman can do. And man, my mom's a doctor. She's got her doctorate. She's a doctor in whatever, education. And I think that those things speak volumes to your kids. And, well, mom did it. I can do it.
Yeah.
And whatever. And then on top of that, it's also like your own self-confidence and your own like pride. And like, I don't think pride is a bad thing. I think it gets this, I think it can be.
Yeah.
But anything to an
extreme. If you let it get ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's okay to be proud of like the things you've accomplished and things you want to do. And like just self-confidence is like, it's attractive too.
It is. It is. And the way you carry yourself and it just.
Yeah.
And self-confidence can lead to a lot of happiness, know? Like it just like is. It
Absolutely.
is prideful.
Yeah.
Like to be confident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love, I don't know, I love that idea of like just, I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's good to like step outside of your box and your like own little self-made boundaries sometimes and challenge yourself in different ways and like just go for it. Mm-hmm. Hence what we're doing right now is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm faking it till I make it.
Yeah, totally.
Like, but
punt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Like, I could sit, I sat in your classroom and we've talked about this before. I could make videos. Like, look at this Jack Hartman character.
Oh, I know,
like,
right? Oh my God. We could do days of the week and
like
seasons.
Come on.
And
I'll figure it out. Like, whatever. I don't know if I'll ever go down that rabbit hole, but maybe, who knows? Yeah. But it's just like, you look at those types of things and like, I can do it.
Yes.
Like, if I want to do it, you just got to do it. Go for it.
Anything
like, why
you put
hold
your mind
back?
to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to tell my kids that every day.
Nice. Do you have, I was going to ask you about, like, future goals, and you kind of touched on that. Mm-hmm. So, doctor, do you know what you want to get your doctorate in, particularly?
No.
I know that's, like, a longer process.
I don't. I'm sure it'll be something education-wise. Yeah. What the past few years I've been wanting to get my master's. I just didn't get that feeling, like it, that gut feeling, like this is where I want to go, like this is my path. And then this last year, now that I have these, this new set of students that are so complex and individual and beautiful and have so many needs that are really difficult to process for really a lot of people. And I was able to look at teaching in a whole new way, a whole new perspective. By their level is not where I'm teaching, so I need to go to their level. And then I realized that developmentally, there's more support there necessary to get them to be able to learn and to be taught. Mm-hmm. And so it has, the past 6 months I've been working on this assessment that is like hands-on learning. Okay. These learning boxes, and I'm hoping that it'll all be done by September so I can roll it out.
Cool.
But I've been working on it, and I think because I can kind of geek out on this, so bear with me a little bit.
No.
So I think developmental milestones are understated when it comes to kids in high school, and I think we forget those things.
Can you break that down a little bit more? Like, what do you exactly?
Yeah,
what do you mean, like developmental?
So developmental milestones, if you think about from birth to age 1.
Yeah.
Every month, you can go on the CDC website, the Center for Disease Control website, and they have developmental milestones checklists. Yep. Every month, this is what your baby should be doing.
Yep. You'll start to see,
and you'll see
discovering their feet, discovering their,
Right, exactly. Are they playing by themselves next to somebody else, which is called parallel play? Okay. Or are they engaging with the others? All my students currently are in that parallel play where they may engage with something, but they don't really want to engage with other people.
Right. They want the thing maybe that they're
yeah,
they
like
have,
this is what I have,
engagement.
and this is mine, and this is my world, and I get that because there's the autism piece, but then there's also developmental disabilities on top of the autism,
and then the communication aspect that's also challenging.
Exactly, and so all of these factors, I feel like if we can teach developmental milestones in a way that they each can understand. Whether one student doesn't want to be hands-on or the other does, and we can figure these things out. I think if we can teach them that other things around them exist and these are what they're for, like a baby discovering their hands going to their mouth. Like, obviously our students know those things, but it's more than that. It's being able to understand that I don't know. It's just understanding that each step in developmental milestones gets you ready for the next.
Right.
And communication is a huge part of that. So it's turn-taking games. It's playing peekaboo, even though that might not be age appropriate, but you can play hide and seek, or you can play games that are age appropriate.
But at the same time, what is age appropriate in our world some ways?
Their cognitive ability this might be age appropriate for their cognition.
Right. And there's a relationship building component to that. There's a happiness component to that of having fun and teaching them just to have fun and to laugh and to smile and that you're not just the person that is also going to correct them when they do something wrong, but they're also going to be, which is a fine line sometimes, especially at our school when you have such extreme behaviors at times.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know. So I've been working on this all these tools to figure out, and what I'm hoping through my master's program is that they're going to help me develop this into something that's producible, so that others can benefit from it as well.
And just looking through it, I'm seeing it as almost like a blueprint in some ways of. Not that you the system side of things, although it's more of a naturally occurring type environment. But if you're trying to teach things out of order, right, of those developmental things, like you're kind of saying, if you're trying to teach a child to grasp something, but they haven't even discovered their hand yet,
right,
then what are we doing?
Right.
You know?
You got to take a few steps back and realize, okay, they don't know how to do this part that's going to get them to the next.
It's almost like mapping out
success.
Where they're at.
Yeah.
Interesting. I really like that.
So I don't know. It's a very different take. I'm kind of stepping out of the box a little bit.
Yeah.
But
like a badass woman would do.
Yeah.
What are some of the things? This is something I'm really fascinated by. I've traveled some, not a lot, but when you go to other cultures and you go to other places, and there's just innate things that everybody understands. And I think it holds true to the population of students that we work with and that you work with. One thing that I think is innate within everyone is a smile. Everybody knows what a smile is.
Do they?
I think so. I hear what you're saying. But I think that laughing and a smile, it's, you don't teach it. It just happens. Yeah. It's not something, I know what you're saying because of sometimes the autism side of things as well. When we talk about emotions and feelings. But,
yeah, but we've seen all of our students happy. Yeah. Right?
And nobody's taught them how to be happy. It's just that brings them joy. It's something that they're expressing that because it's something that has brought them joy. It can be something that we don't find joyful, whatever, but we see those things. And when you go to another country and you don't speak the same languages, a smile goes a long way. Yes. Smile and a wave, to a kid. So true. And you just see them laughing and whatever. You don't have to speak the language. You can just, laughing is laughing, and smiles are smiles. Are there things that you see within the special education world that you would say, I think these are innate things?
All the emotions. Completely innate, absolutely. I think what even though at times the behaviors that we work with are very challenging, it's the most purest form of emotion that you could probably ever find.
True.
Whether it's anger, frustration, silliness, anything, any
that
reason.
Purity in all of those things is so beautiful.
It really is.
It's
I do think that, and I know that people think that, well, just be happy, like that's beautiful. Well, be angry.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we don't want to hurt people, but
no.
I sometimes don't think that the students understand what their hands are doing in that moment of crisis.
Yeah.
And it's just important to work with that. But I mean, I've seen all of my students happy, sad, mad, tired, sick, a million emotions.
Yeah.
I've seen it all. And it is so fun to be able to look at the small positive little things that do happen.
Yeah.
When you're trying to teach a student to say hi and smile, and they do it. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so
absolutely
awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
I saw a video, I think it was yesterday, but there was just that. It was talking about like people that, I think it was a friend of mine that works in some related field, but it was a video they shared, just people that like learned to communicate for the first time, you know, and I saw it was like,
oh my gosh,
having their communication
it's
device,
so
and they
cool.
were like, you know, like the look on their face of like that pure, like, oh my gosh, like you did what like
I have words.
I said hi.
They
like,
came out of me somehow. Yes. Yeah. It's really been this last year with the students that I've had. A lot of them were new to our classroom that I work in, and obviously we had a lot of staff in and out, a lot of this and that, but the amount of progress that was made, the relationships that were built, and the families that feel almost what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe a weight lifted off their shoulders a little bit, that there's people in their children's life that understands.
Yeah. It's more than just respite for them. It's also they're learning and growing.
They are learning and growing in that,
because there is a respite piece too.
Oh, absolutely.
Our students and them being at our school, which is not a really talked about thing.
Yeah.
But goodness, like sometimes it's like, we get it, you know, they send their kids and you're like, why did you send your, like, well, because they need a break. They deal with this on a...
Well, and we're a little more equipped if their child is having a hard time.
Yep.
So they get sent in and we can help them through these crises, however you want to pluralize crisis.
I know, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I have scars.
Yeah.
But...
Same.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah. Because
you've made a difference in somebody's life, their home life, their well-being.
Where did that originate from for you? Do you feel like you just were always like we talked about, you have a very empathetic heart, you have a big heart, you feel very much what your students and what people around you feel. I think that those are sometimes natural occurring things. I feel like that was something I get from my parents, obviously, but it's more than that. And I think that like the drive to continue, that's always been my thing. I want to help people. I don't know what that looks like always, you know, but where did that come from for you? Or like, when did you realize you wanted to like help people, or was there anything that...
I think it's just always been me.
Yeah.
I remember, like, this is the simplest thing, but I remember when we would be driving in the car when I was younger, and I would see other cars driving by, like, on a highway, and you'd see other cars, and I would always wonder, like, oh, I wonder where they're going. I wonder what they're up to, or, like, you know, like, I know where I'm going and doing, and, like, I wonder how their ride's going.
Right.
Like, I've always wondered about other people and how they feel.
I think the same thing when you see a plane fly over. You're like, where are they going?
Yeah,
you know?
like, where are they coming from? How many people are in there?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, how cool.
Yeah.
How many babies are crying?
Right.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's just always been there.
Sure.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's become more so, and I really try to reflect that in teaching with others too, because I honestly think it's easier on everybody if we can take the moment to just think about where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And it's made me a much more patient individual, I'd say, in the last year, for sure. That you just don't always know what life's going to throw at you, and do I want to spend my time being angry at that, or should I just find the positives in it and learn from it and move on?
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
And it's hard because that was kind of one of my, on the same lines as one of my next questions I wanted to ask you was, like, not to go in like a negative direction, but like what are a few things, or what are some things that you wish the education, just in general, education world, special education world, how there's gaps? I think we could both probably name a few gaps, and not just South Campus. I'm not talking about like our school in particular, just in general. What are some of those gaps, and what can we do, or what's the conversation that needs to happen to make those gaps smaller and less of a divide?
Yeah, I think I think educating the general population about this rare population of, I mean, I do focus in on South Campus a lot because it's such a rare population of students that come to us.
I would agree.
And as hard as it is for that transition for those kids and the families, I would say 95% of families seem to be, and I don't know that statistic, but it seems that a lot of families are very happy once they are in our care, because we accept all walks of life that walk in that door.
Absolutely.
And we figure it out. I think
we don't shy away. We're not really afraid of anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing we haven't seen that we can't handle or deal with or figure out if we don't know how to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there needs to be so like this just for example, this master's class that I'm in right now, I'm there's only 5 of us in this class, and 4 of them are brand new teachers, but they're all general education. I'm the only special education teacher, and I think education in general, there needs to be more collaboration with being able to work with all of the kinds of special ed that comes in and out of the door. And that's kids that push into mainstream maybe part of the day, or those that have, maybe higher functioning disabilities in some way, and they're in mainstream all day long.
Right.
How is that teacher going to be able to bring knowledge to and educate that student
if they've never had any training or
any
and
it usually
knowledge.
falls on the teacher then to look it up, research it, figure it out on your own,
which doesn't happen.
It
does, but it's few and far between sometimes.
And it's something you have to do individually.
Yeah.
And
it's above and beyond your Call of Duty sometimes.
Right, or the kids fall through the cracks, and
which you see more often than not.
Right, and that's so hard, because I would hope that all educators are in this to help others and to help students succeed. But if you think about, oh my goodness, preschool all the way to college level, that's a lot of kids. That's a lot of learning, and I don't feel that education gets enough support.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
Especially public schools.
Yep. Well, and that's like part of it too. I mean, it's obviously it's a complicated issue, but your gen ed teachers, I mean, I know several of them that
they have 30 to 40 kids in their classroom.
And every hour.
Yeah. So the
How
idea
do you even
of
get
even
to know your kids?
Exactly. And the idea of even taking time out of their day to work with one specific student that's having a struggle, that's struggling with some sort of disability or issue, good luck.
Yeah.
Like,
here you go.
Do you change everything you do to help this one student?
Right.
And then you let the other ones just skate by or get, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's just not a simple thing. And
right.
This is another thing I keep saying is if it was simple, we would already have a solution. You know,
True.
It's complex,
True.
but, yeah, I agree.
I mean, we've talked about revolving doors. It's hard to keep people in a position where, one, the pay isn't...
It's mediocre at best.
Yeah, I mean, you can't always live on it, you know? I mean, until recently, I have always had 2 jobs, if not 3. And
most people at South Campus have another job.
Exactly.
And if they don't, then they have someone that's in their life that's supporting them so that they don't have to.
Right, exactly. And I don't know, I mean, I look at professional sports players and how much they make. And what difference are they making in the lives of others versus in education.
Sure.
And holy cow, like teachers at best are $40,000 to $60,000 a year. Yeah. Unless you go back to school.
Right. But then there's pros and cons to some of those too.
And then you have student loans to pay back.
Yep. And then on top of that, like even I've heard stories of people having trouble because you're overeducated to get the position that they want. So then they're in a different pay bracket because of the way the education system's set up.
Exactly.
And so then they're less likely to get that job because they would rather hire the person that came straight out of school. They don't have to pay as much because then they have to go through, get their master's over time, and there's just a whole bureaucratic BS that you have to go through.
And then you've got, a NFL player making millions.
Yep.
And I understand they work really hard, but what impact are they actually making?
Right.
And I don't know.
It's fine. I agree. I mean, you're not wrong. That's the thing. There's a ton of different.
The priority to me just seems, why wouldn't we want to educate our youth to become the people that are going to run our society?
Yep.
Why would we not cradle that a little bit more and support it?
Yeah.
And find the money somehow to make that happen.
Absolutely. And
to keep teachers. And
I completely agree. I think that it's just a shift. I mean, it's so true. And I think there is, like you said, I would really like to think that most teachers are in it for the right reasons. But I think it's different in some of your gen ed classrooms or gen ed teachers than it is in our classroom. And in some ways, like in our school, because again, I think we naturally filter people out that aren't there for the right reasons. Because if you're not, why would you?
Well, and
in some ways, why
do you
want to
show up again?
Yeah, or like, why would you want to put yourself through that if that's not what you wanted? Like, you didn't care about what you were doing.
Right.
In some ways, like we don't get paid well. We get all sorts of stuff thrown at us, and so if you're not there for the students and you're there for the kids, then what are you there for?
Right.
And if you're not there for the right reasons, then why would you want to stick around and deal with some of that?
Right.
And go find another job. Go do it. Where, not that other teachers couldn't do that, but I think that you could fall into that same pattern sometimes of just going with the flow and this is the way it is. And like everybody, we all do that. But.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You know, it's funny. When I was like 22, I had a friend who ran a group home. And he asked me because I was learning sign language. And he had a deaf client in one of the homes. And he's like, would you like a job? Because I'll just hire you right on the spot.
Yeah.
And I walked in. And this client right away started pulling my hair, throwing nail polish bottles at me, all this stuff. I walked out and never went back.
Yeah.
And what's so ironic about that is what I do now.
Yes.
Like, that would have been no big deal.
Yeah.
You know, like,
oh, yeah.
Like, I
normal day.
like, yesterday I got a toilet water bath.
Oh, perfect.
Like, that was cool.
Sweet.
You know, wash my hair in the sink. Like, it just, like, another day, like, big deal. They got, you know, the kid got upset. Let's move on.
I've said it
and
with...
we'll work it out.
Yep.
And
I've said it with, like, everybody that's been, you know, from South Campus that's been on here, but it's like, yeah, you name the bodily fluid, we deal with it.
It's true. And
then some.
Right. Oh my gosh.
And some you're like, I don't know what that fluid was, but let's clean it up and get it out of the way.
It's so hard to even explain, like, in a day what one does. I think I sat down today for like 10 minutes.
Right.
And the whole day. And
well, and I've told people,
it's fun.
I've tried to
forget that, like, oh my gosh, things just keep happening.
Yeah.
And you just have to go.
I've told friends and family, like, stories, and they're like, wait, that's at school? I'm like, yeah, it's just a little different, you know?
It is,
It's hard to compute that sometimes. But.
Yeah, but I think if we're in it, that I think these families deserve to have people in their life that are going to support and lift them up and love their kids. I think anybody that we work with that says they don't love at least one of our kids is lying.
Crazy.
Yeah.
They're so sweet.
Yeah,
the
they are.
We can tell horror stories, but we can also tell all the sweet stories.
But
in the moments.
exactly, and the sweet stories are, I think, what makes us come back every day.
Yeah, they take over those bad moments for sure. Just seeing those smiles on your kids' faces.
Oh my gosh!
I heard Kari. She texted me the other day and said my buddy that I worked with every day. He was trying to log into the computer with my information that he used to, like, log in with. And she asked him if he missed me, and he was like, Shane, please. And I was like, my heart, like, it hurts. But.
Yeah.
Well, Annie, I know you've got to get going. You got to get to your kids.
I do.
So
Sammy has a baseball game.
We've been talking for a while.
Last game of the season.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to close this out here.
All right.
But thank you so much.
Thank
Is there anything
you,
you want to say?
Shane, for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, honestly, for being here. And again, like, you're amazing. You're doing an amazing job. And I really respect you, and I respect the work that you continue to put into special education as a teacher, and the care and empathy that you continue to, like, just give. And also, it's contagious. When people see it, it's contagious. Other people want to do it. And I think that that's important for us to be those examples of doing good and making a difference. And even it's the simple little things. So
thank you, Shane.
Absolutely.
That's
Thank you
lovely.
so much for being here. And you all out there, remember, do good, make a difference, and we'll see you later. Peace!